In this video, I'm going to talk about Amazon dropshipping on a small budget, and I'm going to give you what I believe to be the right advice for doing this. And in doing this, I think the first thing we need to do is really define what is a small budget. And the thing is, small is really a relative term. So there really is no exact amount for small. However, I'm going to, for the sake of argument, go with $2,000 or less. And I'm just going to base this number on a low ROI, okay, a lower side of ROI for this business model of 10%. Now, I'm not saying that that's the only ROI you should go for or expect to make, but I'm just saying that in Amazon dropshipping, this is kind of like considered to be a lower end of expected ROI. However, let's assume that you made this minimum ROI of 10%. Well, if you have a $2,000 investment, that would mean that you make $200 profit. And I'm talking monthly, right? So $2,000 every month, you're going to make $200 profit at 10% ROI. Okay. Now, that profit of $200, I think it's like just enough to at least break even for this business model. And when I say break even, I'm referring to breaking even on the cost of software, which is really going to be the biggest potential expense that a dropshipper has, since you're not dealing with actual physical inventory, right? So software is the main expense. Now, so just keep that in mind, and I'm going to continue. Now, facts about small budget dropshipping. Number one, your risk tolerance is lower because you have less money, right? So you have a lower tolerance of risk. So you shouldn't take the same risk as someone with a big budget does. Secondly, your actual profit, like the actual dollar amount of your profit, is going to be lower at the same ROI compared to a big budget dropshipper. Let me explain with an example. 10% ROI on a $1,000 investment, well, that yields $100 profit. Okay, 10% ROI on $1,000, $100 profit, where 10% ROI on a $100,000 investment is $10,000 profit. Okay, look how much larger that profit is. It's the same ROI, right, 10%, but because the investment amount is so much larger, of course, the dollar amount of the profit is also just that much larger, right? So this is a key thing that you have to keep in mind when you're dropshipping with a small budget, okay? Another thing is that you cannot generally sell as many units of your products when you're doing small budget dropshipping, depending on the price of the product, because you don't have the money to purchase that many units. So this is also something that's important to keep in mind with your inventory, that you don't overdo your inventory to a point where you can't even fill the orders, which is something I've talked about in other videos. So keep that in mind as well. For instance, you can only sell 10 units of a $100 product with $1,000. That's it, right? If you have $1,000 to spend, you can only sell 10 units if they cost $100 each. Now, I'm going to give you some tips that I believe are useful for Amazon dropshipping on a small budget. Number one, don't actually sell high-priced products. And again, the word high is relative. Okay, so high price, that's relative to your budget. Because there's something called the risk of returns, right? Returns can cause you to lose money, both permanently or temporarily. And let me explain why. Buyers are more likely, well, for one, when you sell higher price items, buyers are more likely to return those items than the ones that are cheaper, okay, or low cost items. This is just a fact. Number two, you have to wait for the buyer to return the item and the supplier to refund you. So when there is a return, even if you supply a label, you have to actually wait for the buyer to return the item. Okay, and they can take long to do that. In some cases, you may even be charged return shipping from the supplier itself, or if it's a pre-authorized return on Amazon, they sometimes can charge you for a label, but that's a whole another story. But the point is, return shipping might cost you. Also, there's a possibility that you might not actually be getting a cash return. It might be store credit, especially if you used a gift card for the purchase, right? So it's not like you're going to get the cash when you get the return, it's not like the supplier is going to give you cash back in your hand that you can use to go invest at a different supplier. You've got the store credit from a particular supplier, and now you have to use that credit from the supplier, right? So now you're going to have to buy another item using that same supplier again, and then again wait to get paid by Amazon, which takes at least 2 weeks, right? Generally. Now, let's look at an example of selling a high price item with a low budget. Let's say you sell an item and it costs $200, but you only have a $500 budget for purchases for the month, let's say. Well, then in turn, the buyer does a return, okay? So here's the problem. When they do this return, of course, you're going to have to refund them. And now it's as if you did not make that money that you thought you made, but you already spent the $200 on the product. Now you've got to wait for the return to be completed by the buyer before you get your $200 return. And now you only have $300 left, right? So it's almost like, I don't like to use the word waste, but it's as if you feel like you wasted that $200, right? Because now you don't have it, and now you have to wait to get that money back however long it takes before you have that $200 to spend again. So this is the issue with selling high-priced products on a small budget. And again, when I say high-priced, it's in ratio to whatever your budget is, okay? Tip number 2, don't sell at a very low ROI. And here's the thing. Here's why. If your average is 1%, and I'm just exaggerating, let's say your average ROI, I left out the word ROI, is 1%, well then you will earn only $1 profit for every $100 that you invest. $500 a month, you'd be earning $5 profit. $1,000 investment, you would be earning $10 profit. Okay, so what's the problem with that? Well, the problem with that is that these profits are not going to cover your expenses. Okay, so on a small budget, selling at these extremely low ROIs, I left out a word here as well, that can actually literally put you out of business, right? Now, for that reason, you've got to set a minimum ROI that is reasonable. Okay, you need to have a reasonable amount for your ROI. Now, there are some challenges I realize in doing this, and this is why people sell at very low ROI, because they're just trying to drive sales, right? It's time consuming to find products. That's one issue. The high competition is another reason why people keep driving down the price, and they will take a very low ROI. And retail dropshipping, inherently, the model is more of a low ROI model. Not to say that you can't make high ROIs. I have made some fairly high ROIs on Amazon. I mean, as much as even like 80%, including cashback and all of that. Sometimes even more. I mean, but I've also made much lower ROIs on a lot of products too, of 10, 15, right? So part of it is the model. Now, here are some of the solutions, right? You really need like more advanced research methods, and that is really how you're going to find products with the higher ROI, right? So that you don't have to take these really, really very low ROIs. I have some fairly, what I believe to be fairly good methods. Check my links to see what I have, and because I have some methods that I think are very useful for finding a more high ROI, or at least more profitable products, okay? Now, another thing you can do is you can do low cost, and I'm using the word low cost because we're talking about small budget dropshipping. So low cost outsourcing of your product research, that would be your other option, basically having someone else do it. But again, it has to be within your budget, right? What you can afford, okay? So these are just some, the two things that will help you provide a solution to finding better ROI products. Now, tip number 3, don't use too much software, okay? And before I really get into this, I want to make it clear that, I am a computer science person, okay? I was a computer science teacher for about 15 years. I'm also a programmer. I'm the first person to tell you about the power of software, automation, all of that, how powerful it is. However, there is a key problem, which is that although it's very powerful, that it can easily eat up all your profits, because the cost of software can be very high when you start totaling a lot of different softwares together. Okay, so the expense can easily eat all of your profits, plus more on a small budget. remember the 10% ROI example that I gave, okay, in talking about how small the profit could potentially be compared to your investment. So now if you take the cost of software and you subtract from that, all right, now you're making even less. Now, number 3, there are other options for doing product research and sourcing. And in the early stages, even the inventory and pricing. So I know a lot of people are telling you to use all these different softwares, but they're not really telling you to do that on a budget where you can't afford it. They're just telling you that these are powerful softwares and they're powerful and they're useful for certain things. But if you're not making enough profit to cover the cost of the software, I mean, there's something called the bottom line, right? And you're just not making the profit. So then you need to find and you need to use other methods until you can get yourself to that level where you can really afford all of that software. Okay. So in general, here are my main points for dropshipping on a small budget. All right. Number 1, you need to limit your monetary risks, and all of the things I talked about basically contribute to that, right? So you need to limit your risk, okay, in terms of the actual money that you put into things, right? Don't overinvest in products or software, right? So that's really the beginning of it, because you can control that, right? That's something you can control. You can decide not to try to sell a product that costs $500, knowing that $500 is your whole budget for dropshipping. You can control that. You can decide not to invest in a software that is $100 a month, knowing that your expected profit is only $200, and that's going to be half your profit, and that the $100 that's left over, that you're going to have to use it for something else, and that you're basically going to end up with potentially a negative profit, a loss of money, right? So these are things you can control. And really, I think number 3 is really, it kind of relates into all of this, kind of sums it all together, which is you have to have realistic expectations of time and money. And when you have realistic expectations, it will affect your decision making in a way that makes more sense. So basically, you cannot expect that with a $500 budget or even a $1,000, perhaps even a $2,000 budget, monthly budget for Amazon dropshipping, you cannot expect to make, say, $100,000 in 2 months, right? It's just, not how it works. And I know there's a lot of stuff out there where they're showing you these big numbers and they're showing you these huge sales numbers, and people are trying to tell you how much they're making. But the big part of it that a lot of those people are leaving out is the investment. You have to invest a certain amount of money to make that amount of money. There's such a phrase, it takes money to make money, and that's really where that phrase stems from. It's not saying that you have to be rich to make money, but what it's saying is that you're going to have to input some kind of money in order to generate the profits. Okay, so you cannot generate those kind of numbers that people are showing you if you don't have the money to put into it in the first place. So what you need to do is you need to build your business gradually, make what you can, and you gradually reinvest in your business and you grow it with time. Okay, this is realistically how you build a business. Okay, so that's basically it for me on this particular video on Amazon dropshipping on a small budget. Do check the video for any links to see if there's anything pertinent. And I'm always adding links to these videos. I'm Mr. Mark. This is Excel for Amazon Dropshipping. If you have any comments, questions, or suggestions, please feel free to leave them below or respond to me via email. And I look forward to seeing you in another video.